Good day, children. I hope you're all fine. I hope you're taking very good care of yourself and your families. Children, do you live in a free country? Yes, you are lucky. You're very, very lucky to be living in a free country. Can you tell me the date on which India became independent? Yes, absolutely right. 15th August 1947. And before that date, who was ruling over India? That's right, the British. The British came to India as traders. And from 1757 onwards, bit by bit, they started taking over our country. They started ruling over us. And in almost 200 years, they had taken over the entire country. And they became the rulers, and we, the natural inhabitants, the true inhabitants of India, we became their slaves. Can you imagine what it felt like to be treated as second-grade citizens? As animals? We were not given any rights. So much so that there were places where they even put up boards saying, dogs and Indians not allowed. They ill-treated our countrymen, and they enjoyed our riches. Children, our self-respect, our pride, our love for our country could not let this go on forever. We had to fight for our freedom. This freedom did not come easy, children. Thousands of Indians lost their lives to get this freedom for us. Millions fought for it. So you, the lucky ones who are born in a free country, who are living in a free country, owe this to those great freedom fighters of our country. And it wasn't just India, it was several other countries, including South Africa, who had to fight for their freedom. South Africa had to bear the yoke of foreign rule, the yoke of the white supremacy for 300 years. Today, let's study an excerpt from Nelson Mandela's autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. This excerpt is given in our Class 10 English book, First Flight, where he writes about the freedom struggle of the black South Africans from the white supremacy. South Africa became independent on 31st May 1961. The British Empire there came to an end, but the country still suffered from apartheid. This is a political system which separates people based on race. The white people started ruling over the blacks. The blacks did not get equality in their own country. They were still not free. And Nelson Mandela writes about his country's walk to freedom and how they stood up against apartheid, how they were victorious over apartheid. Now let's read the lesson. Nelson Mandela was a South African anti-apartheid revolutionary, political leader, and social worker. He was also a great philanthropist. He was born on 18th July 1918 in South Africa. He died on the 5th of December in 2013. Mandela and his African National Congress spent a lifetime fighting against apartheid. Mandela had to spend 27 years in prison. Finally, democratic elections were held in South Africa in 1994, and Mandela became the first black president of a new nation, as his party had won 252 out of the 400 seats. He served as president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. He won many awards, like the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993, the Bharat Ratna in 1990, the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2002, the Congressional Gold Medal in 1998, Lenin Peace Prize in 1990, Gandhi Peace Prize in 2001, and there were several other awards. He wrote his autobiography, Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. This has also been made into a movie. Several films have been made on him. In this extract from his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, Mandela speaks about a historic occasion, the inauguration. 10th May dawned, bright and clear. For the past few days, I had been pleasantly besieged by dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheatre formed by the Union buildings in Pretoria. For decades, this had been the seat of white supremacy, and now it was the site of a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. Children, on what date was the inauguration? That's correct, 10th May 1994. From how many countries had the leaders come for the inauguration? Take a guess. From more than 140 countries. And what was being inaugurated? Yes, think about it. South Africa's first democratic and non-racial government was being installed. The blacks in South Africa, the original inhabitants of South Africa, the natives, had lived under the yoke of the British for more than 300 years, and then they had suffered under apartheid. So finally, they were getting their own democratic form of government. Where did the ceremonies take place? Yes, in a lovely sandstone amphitheatre. This was formed by the Union buildings in Pretoria. Children, the amphitheatre is a building without a roof with many rows of seats rising in the steps. Greece and Rome have such amphitheatres. They were used for entertainment as well as official programs. Sometimes they would even have bullfights and sword fights and several other competitions to test the strength of the participants there. Children, can you tell me if we have any sandstone buildings in India? Yes, we do. Okay. The Red Fort of Delhi and Agra, the Rashtrapati Bhavan, the Parliament House. Yes, the palaces of Jodhpur, Jaisalmer, Bikaner. Very good. Yes, we have a lot of sandstone buildings in India. Rather, sandstone can be found almost all over India, most of all in Rajasthan. Children, how was the amphitheatre the seat of white supremacy? The white did not let any colored people enter there. Why does Nelson Mandela call 10th of May an autumn day? This is because South Africa is in the southern hemisphere and May is autumn in the southern hemisphere. Children, why has Mr. Mandela called it a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations? Yes, because the people who are gathered there are from more than 140 countries. They were of different colors, races, and religions. On that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Zinani. On the podium, Mr. de Klerk was first sworn in as the second deputy president. Then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as the first deputy president. When it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the Constitution and to devote myself to the well-being of the Republic and its people. Children, who was the first deputy president? Thabo Mbeki. And who was the second deputy president? Yes, Mr. de Klerk. What did Mr. Mandela pledge to do? Yes, he pledged to obey and uphold the Constitution and to devote himself to the well-being of the Republic and its people. What is a republic? It is a form of government in which a state is ruled by representatives of the citizens. Children, Nelson Mandela gives a very powerful speech to the assembled guests and the watching world. He said, "Today, all of us do, by our presence here, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. We, who were the outlaws not so long ago, have today been given the rare privilege to be host to the nations of the world on our own soil. We thank all our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country of what is, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, and for human dignity. We have at last achieved our political emancipation. We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discrimination. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. What is the extraordinary human disaster, and for how long has it lasted? Yes, it is apartheid and foreign subjugation, and this has lasted for over 300 years. Mr. Mandela says we who were the outlaws. What does he mean by this? Yes, this can be taken in two ways. That they as revolutionaries were considered as outlaws by the government, and they as South Africans were also considered as outlaws by the other countries because of their policy of apartheid. But now, since apartheid is over, everyone has equality, they have gained acceptance, and the revolutionaries are going to be the new leaders of the country. Children, what are the ideals that he sets for the future of South Africa? Right, they have already achieved political emancipation, political freedom. But he feels that they have to do away with all kinds of discrimination, that they have to free themselves of the poverty, of deprivation, of suffering, and of gender discrimination. Children, do you ever feel gender discrimination at home or in society? Do you ever feel that the boys are being favored more or the girls are being favored more? And most of all, the third gender, do you see them being discriminated against ever? Think about it, children. Mr. Mandela says the sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. What does he mean by this? Yes, that this freedom will never come to an end. Children, what does Mr. Mandela thank the international leaders for? Yes, for being a part of the inauguration ceremony. He thanks them for having come to take possession with the people of Africa for what is, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, and for human dignity. So, how was justice won? Yes, it was a huge revolutionary effort. A lot of people gave up their lives for this. And why were they fighting against the whites? Yes, because the whites were oppressing the blacks. So they had to fight for human dignity, for equality, for justice, to be treated at par with everyone else, for their rights, because they were the natives of South Africa. They should not have been treated as second-grade citizens. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers roared in perfect formation over the Union buildings. It was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. Only moments before, the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before, they would not have saluted but arrested me. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue, and gold of the new South African flag. Children, the word democracy has its root in two Greek words, demos and kratos. So demos means people and kratos means rule. So democracy is the rule of the people. Democracy is a form of government in which the people have the authority to choose their own government. So it can be called the government by the people, of the people, and for the people. So what are they celebrating in South Africa? They are celebrating the rule of democracy there. Here the military is putting up a beautiful display. What does the beautiful display by the military in the form of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers roaring in perfect formations signify? Yes, children, it signifies the military's loyalty to democracy, to the newly formed democratic government, which has been freely and fairly elected. Earlier, the same military stood by the white supremacy, the government of the white. But now it is standing by the government of the people. Children, what did the military generals do? And what is different about their attitude? Yes, the military generals saluted Nelson Mandela and they pledged their loyalty to him and his government. And what is different is that these same generals had served with the previous government. And at that time, they had treated these people like revolutionaries. And they would have arrested Mandela and his comrades. What were the colors of the smoke left by the Impala jets? Yes, black, green, red, blue, and gold. And what was special about these colors? That's right, they were colors of the South African flag. The day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems and the vision of whites singing Kosi Sikalel e Africa and black singing De Stem, the old anthem of the Republic. Although that day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem they once despised, they would soon know the words by heart. Children, why are two national anthems being sung? Yes, that's right. So, the stem is the national anthem of the whites and Kosi Sikalel is the national anthem of the blacks. And at this time, both of them are being sung to show that both are equal, that South Africa believes in the equality of its people. Nelson Mandela has firm faith that the people of his country, whether they were white or black or any other color, would grow to love each other, they would care for each other, and they would respect each other. And that is how they would also be respectful of each other's national anthems. For after all, they both celebrated South Africa. Kosi Sikaleli Africa was written by Enoch Santoga in 1897. On the day of the inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War and before my own birth, the white-skinned people of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned people of their own land. The structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhumane societies of the world. Most inhumane societies the world has ever known. Now, in the last decade of the 20th century and my own 8th decade as a man, that system has been overturned forever and replaced by one that recognized the rights and freedoms of all peoples, regardless of the color of their skin. Children, between whom was the Anglo-Boer War fought? It was fought between the British Empire and the Boer states, which were the Orange Free State and the South African Republic. Can you guess why this war was fought? It was fought because diamonds and gold were discovered there, and everyone wanted to get hold of those. What is this system of racial domination of the white-skinned people against the dark-skinned people called? Yes, you know the word? Yes, it was apartheid. This was a terrible system. It was very inhuman. It was cruel to treat others in such a horrible manner. And now in the last decade of the 20th century, what year that he's talking about it? Yes, they are in the year 1994. That is why it is in the last decade of the 20th century. And how old was Nelson Mandela? Yes, he was in his 70s. So that's how he calls it his 8th decade. Right. And what kind of a society, what kind of a nation have they built up now? Now they have a democratic setup where all the people, whatever the color of their skin, will be considered as equal. That day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. I felt that day, as I have on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. That long and noble line ended and now began again with me. I was pained that I was not able to thank them and that they were not able to see what their sacrifices had wrought. So here he talks about all the national patriots who had come before him, all the freedom fighters who had fought for the freedom of South Africa. Because you do not get freedom in one day. These people fought for 300 long years to be free of the rule of the white-skinned people. And in the white-skinned people, it was both the British as well as the Dutch. In India also, we've had a very long rule of the British, and for almost 200 years, as long as the British were trying to rule over us, our Indian patriots were fighting for the freedom of our country. So our histories are very similar, Africa's as well as ours. We all wanted freedom, we all wanted equality. Children, this is all for now. We will study the rest of the lesson in the next session. And in the meantime, I'd like you to collect pictures of the freedom fighters who fought for the freedom of India and make a beautiful collage with it. And in case you can't find the pictures, you could draw some or you could write about them. But yes, I would like you to do some research on the freedom fighters of India.